please all rise and join me in the flag salute. Right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Here.
Yes.
Thank you. The first thing on the agenda, and I'm sorry, I'm not anyway. Not walking fast. Anyhow, is to have a special presentation by the Thousand Oaks Community Center homeschool enrichment programs. Thank you.
Yes. Hello.
Now, where do we call items?
Good evening, Chair Cussworth, not here today. Members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. My name is America Nava, Recreation Supervisor for the Thousand Oaks Community Center. I'm here tonight with Recreation Specialist Kelly McPherson, soon to be coordinator, to share a little bit about our growing homeschool enrichment program. This program has been offered for over 10 years, providing extracurricular activities and social opportunities for kids ages 6 through 12. We will share with you a brief history of the program, its structure, how we work with the charter schools, and the changes we implement to adapt to the challenges of the last couple of years. The program was originally developed to meet the homeschool community need for recreation programs, specialized classes, and socialization opportunities. The first homeschool enrichment academy started in the fall of 2011. Once a week at the Cameron Center, a block schedule was developed to offer 50-minute classes, 5 of them per day from 9 to 2. Participants could pick from up to 3 options of classes in each time slot to explore their extracurricular interests. Parents could drop off their kids for 1, multiple, or all 5 time slots and pick them up at the end of the day. A CRPD staff remained on site for the entire duration of the program to help with the room transition and supervising kids as they moved from program to program. The homeschool enrichment at Cameron Center successfully continued for 9 years until the end of winter session 2020, when the pandemic started. After the pandemic, the demand for the homeschool enrichment programs grew, with many parents opting to homeschool their kids for the first time. We adjusted the program to comply with the COVID county regulations and started with virtual programs in the fall of 2020, then transitioned back into in-person enrichment with a really small limited group of kids in spring 2021. Callan McPherson has been running the program for the last year, and he is here tonight to tell us a little bit about the current location, the way we engage with the homeschool community of the Conejo Valley.
All right, so we transitioned the program to Hillcrest Center when the Cameron Center became the new offices for our Costco Rangers. We expanded into a 2-day program beginning in spring 2022 and are offering it on Mondays and Wednesdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Classes can range greatly from yoga to sewing, from STEM classes all the way to ukulele classes. We offer our homeschool enrichment classes 3 times a year during the fall, winter, and spring sessions. So this is an example of one of our schedules, and here's a look at some of our classes that we have here. Our first one here is a Lego STEM class. Kids get the opportunity to learn science through Legos. Here's another, this is an animation class through the use of Legos. A woodworking class. An art class, chess, ukulele. Here's a chain reactions class. It's a basic physics class. Another chain reactions, and a yoga class here. And then last but not least, we have around the world, capoeira, which is a Brazilian martial arts recently added this year, and a sewing class. Kids had so much fun together in these programs that at the end of their school semester, they want an opportunity to socialize outside of our homeschool enrichment programs. This resulted in a pool party at our local Cal Lutheran pool with the collaboration of our awesome aquatics department. We had over 90 participants attend, including siblings and parents of our homeschool students. Before the start of our fall registration, we held an information night similar to CBUSD's back to school nights. New and returning families got the opportunity to attend and get a preview of our upcoming fall session. We covered the daily procedures of signing in and out, allowed contract instructors to showcase their classes and some of the projects students would be doing during their session. And lastly, we covered charter school procedures and registration tips.
Charter schools provide an education path that is flexible and individualized for children, as well as supplying families with funds for physical education, science, STEM, and art. Homeschool parents can use the funds to cover the cost of our programs or pay out of pocket. Conejo Recreation and Park District is an approved vendor for 5 charter schools, including Blue Ridge, Golden Valley, Sage Oak, Shine, and iLead. We have put together a little slide to show how our partnership with the charter schools has helped increase enrollment for the Thousand Oaks Community Center section of the homeschool program at Hillcrest Center. As the homeschool population has grown, we have adapted to meet the changing needs of the community. This has resulted in each session of homeschool classes filling with a waiting list within the first hour of classes opening for registration. We retain our students by including exciting new programs and asking parents for feedback about the types of programs that they would like to see. And we are always looking for new ways to engage the homeschool community and look forward to offering the homeschool enrichment program for many years to come. Thank you so much for your time. We are available for questions.
Questions?
Yes. Thank you. That's fascinating. I had no idea there was that many opportunities for the homeschool crew to participate in. Just one of the last things you said, America, was that the signups fill up within an hour. Is there a demand to expand and is there capacity to do that? Or is this still trying to decide if that's feasible or not?
We did do that recently. We increased it to, instead of having just 3 classes a day, we went up to 4. So it did go up and it kind of showed us that it did fill the need for now, but if it expands, we will look for other ways to do it, either increase another day or more classes per day if needed.
And is that also contingent upon available contract instructors to be able to provide those sessions?
Absolutely, yes.
Has that been a problem or you've been able to keep up with that?
With contract instructors, we've been able to keep up with that. They have a really good, consistent group that they really enjoy coming out to be with the homeschool kids. In fact, a lot of the instructors return every session. We do have them offer different types of classes or programs, but we have not had a problem right now to get contract instructors for that.
And just kind of, I guess, a technical question. When you say this is a homeschool enrichment program, you're actually not teaching a homeschool class. I would imagine this is like a supplement to their typical homeschool curriculum. Is that how that works?
Correct. This is more extracurricular. So it would be something like if they wanted to do physical education, they could take a class here for like capoeira or yoga that would fulfill that, which is typically maybe something that they wouldn't necessarily do at home. There's also other programs that happen though. Aquatics has a big successful homeschool classes that they do as well. So we're just doing one section of it.
Okay, so it sounds like you're getting feedback from the homeschool folks as to what they need and try to provide that then.
Absolutely. Yes.
Awesome. This sounds fantastic. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for the information. I was aware that something like this was going on, but I have a longtime friend who has homeschooled her 3 children from basically kindergarten. I think the oldest is now in high school. What age groups are participating in these enrichment programs and about how many do you typically have in each session?
It really has varied the last couple of years. It's changed, but we have 6 through 12 is typically the age of the kids. But as far as like programs that we have or how many kids we have each time, it's fluctuated. We've had anything from 100 kids that have done it to 314 that participate in all the classes. So I have some numbers for that as well, but it does fluctuate especially the last 2 years.
And it wasn't quite clear, maybe you had mentioned it, but it wasn't clear about the relationship between the homeschool kids and you had a slide about the charter school.
Yes, that's how they provide funding. So one of them that I mentioned is Shine, and it's actually through Conejo Valley Unified School District. So they have a program for homeschool students. They give them a allotted amount of funds, and they get to decide how they spend it with extracurricular classes. So that's how the charter schools basically help us with being an approved vendor. We provide those classes for them, and then they can use the funds through them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other, yes, right.
Yes, do I recall that charter schools always have a focus on specialty science or whatever?
I'm not sure how, if they have a specific focus, they probably do change on what they do, but when they provide funding, they tell them what they can use it for, whether it be math or STEM or physical education. They kind of have specific things they have to make sure they're doing, and each charter school is different.
Okay, that's kind of a lead-in question. Wondering how CRPD, your classes piggyback into their specialty, but if that's not a, obvious criteria, then that's not applicable.
Usually parents let us know what types of programs they're looking for, and we provide them based on their feedback.
Okay, and one last question. How many other rec and park districts, Pleasant Valley, Rancho Simi, have similar programs for the homeschool community?
That I'm not sure of. I think we're pretty unique in the one that we have. We have grown a lot. I don't know if Pleasant Valley has it. I think they do have some form of homeschool classes, but I believe the one that we have that is pretty unique, that's a block schedule. So they have the opportunity to be dropped off for a few hours. I believe that's just us.
Rochelle, if it makes sense, maybe we can contact the other two park districts and see what they're doing, and if there's anything that they are doing that we're not, that looks like, a good program, we might consider, adopting it and working with the other park districts. Thank you. Very good presentation. And like Director Huffer said, we're aware of many programs throughout the district, but to get specifics on programs such as this is really enlightening, and I'm really glad that we have people like you to carry it out, because I see this as very important. As we know, homeschooling is becoming more and more popular.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Comment? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very
Good
much.
presentation, and we appreciate your doing it for us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, we're going to have items from the public. However, because it may take a lot of people to speak, for items 8 or 9 on our agenda, which is about the pickleball, we would like to wait until we get to that topic before we have comments made. So if you will be patient, we should get there fairly soon. But are there other items from the public that want to be surfaced here? Anybody have a different topic? Okay.
We need to check online. Nobody online?
And if anyone on Zoom does want to make a comment, please raise your hand on the virtual Zoom hand option so we know you want to speak, and then the moderator can allow you to speak, but not for items 8 or 9A at this time. We'll take those when we come to the item.
Nothing showing, right? Okay, so right now, we're just going through our agenda, and we'd like an approval of the agenda. Oh, Director Custer. Okay, moved, and who's second? George Lang. Okay, thank you very much. And our consent calendar,
We will vote to approve.
Pardon? Oh, we need to vote, of course. Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you. All right, consent calendar. Approval of minutes, November 3rd minutes, regular board meeting. And also B, approval of warrants. Do you have a motion to approve the consent calendar? Okay, Dr. Lang, Director Lang,
And I'll second that.
and second by Doug. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you. Next on our agenda, deferred matters.
None.
None, okay. All right, the next item for discussion is to receive information about the current demographics of the district and the process rules for adopting division-based voting. Conduct a public hearing to solicit public testimony regarding the composition of districts, especially communities of interest. I'm turning that over to our general manager.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Holt. Melissa and I just had a conversation about the fact that I was going to turn it over right to her when this item hit. And our consultants in the room, so I'm going to do what I said I was going to do.
All right, so as a reminder for everyone, last week we passed a resolution of intent to start the process to transition to by-division elections. Tonight is the first public hearing required for that transition. So we brought on some experts to help us get through this process. Tonight on Zoom, we have our attorney, Chris Scannell from Nielsen Merksmer, and in person, we have Dr. Justin Levitt from National Demographics Corporation. We're very happy to have him here and help us guide us through this process. And with that, I get to pass it over to Dr. Levitt in his presentation.
Well, thank
Thank
you. Thank you, board. Thank you, members of the community who are here tonight and all of those who are watching on Zoom as well.
Can we get that louder?
I will try to talk a little bit more into the microphone
Okay,
as well.
thank you.
You never know how they kind of
I
get
know.
picked up. My name is Dr. Justin Levitt with National Demographics. We're just pulling up the presentation here, but I can kind of do the first couple slides without needing to much backup. What the district is looking at doing is switching its method of election from an at-large system where all residents can vote for all the members of the board and members of the board can live anywhere within the district, to a by-division system, or a by-district system is probably the term we're more familiar with, which is how we elect members to Congress, to the state legislature, Board of Supervisors. And for those of you who are in the city of Thousand Oaks, it's how the city council recently switched from at-large to district elections for electing members to city council as well. What this means is that you will have you'll have a representative who lives within a certain area, division within the district, and that representative will have to reside within that division, and everybody in that division will have a chance to elect or vote on that particular member. This is because of a law called the California Voting Rights Act. Essentially, it's a 2001 law that encourages jurisdictions to switch from at-large to by district, by trustee area, or here by division. And since 2003, we've seen over 275 school districts, over 175 cities, and many other local agencies make this transition. Essentially, most, I would say that, when the law came into being in 2000, only a handful of cities and school districts used a by district or by division election method. Today, about half of all cities use this method, from just 29 cities back in 2001. And one of the reasons for this is because essentially, under the California Voting Rights Act, it's a little bit easier for somebody to come in, even if they don't know your jurisdiction, they don't know anything about its history or its makeup, and sue. Essentially, it reduces the barriers for an attorney to come in and demand that you change from at-large to by-district elections or by-division elections. And in every case where this has gone up through the courts, the courts have ruled in favor of the plaintiffs, the ones requesting the change. And so we've seen on the second column here, some of the settlements. This does not include what districts and jurisdictions like cities and school districts have spent in their own defense. This is only the official record of the payout to the attorney at the end of the day. And so rather than spend millions of dollars, and literally the settlements are getting into the 6 and even 7 figures in Santa Monica, is what they're asking for there. Many districts and jurisdictions get out ahead of this process by making this change. And if they do that, then they're protected from future liability. Essentially, the way the California Voting Rights Act is worded, if you have district elections or division elections, you're no longer eligible to be targeted under the California Voting Rights Act. So this can potentially save districts millions of dollars in legal expenses. And the state actually lays out a process for making this transition. After 2 initial hearings, the first of which, was basically education on the process. What is the district looking at doing? What are the steps involved? How do we go about drawing lines on the map? We have 2 of those hearings today and December 1st. Then we release our draft maps. So as of right now, there's nothing drawn. We don't come in with any sort of like, here's how it's going to look. We want to get feedback on how they should look so that when we come back in December and then again in January, we have maps to show you based on that feedback and input that we've received. At the December 15th hearing, we initially present the maps. We then come back with revised or changed maps depending on the community feedback on January 5th. And then at the 5th meeting on January 19th, the board will make their final decision on which map to adopt. Now, what rules do we have to follow when it comes to drawing districts? Well, we divide them into 2 groups. On the left-hand column, our federal laws are things that the Supreme Court and other federal courts tell us that we must do. And these are not just true of our divisions, these are true of any district election anywhere in the country. So first, equal population. This is the 1 person, 1 vote principle. Using that 2020 census data, we create areas that are roughly equal in total population. And I say roughly, they don't have to be perfectly down to 1 person. Congressional districts do, but our local districts can deviate, can have a little bit of a difference from that perfectly equal number, up to 10% difference between the largest and smallest district. And by the way, this number includes everyone counted as part of that census, whether you're registered to vote or not, whether you're eligible to vote or not. So children, non-citizens, everyone's counted as part of this total population figure. We also have to comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act. And this time we're dealing with the Federal Voting Rights Act, not the California Voting Rights Act. The Federal Voting Rights Act standard is that while race cannot be used as the only factor or even the predominant factor in the creation of a division, protected class communities, groups that have historically faced discrimination or barriers to registration and voting, have to have their rights protected. And so we're going to look at that analysis as we go through the presentation next couple of slides. The right-hand column, traditional districting principles, are factors that the legislature and the courts, and this could be state and federal courts here, have recognized as being valid for us to consider. We should think of these as things we have to keep in mind, take into balance with each other, and understand how they try to come up with the best combination of them all. For those of you who might have been involved with the city's redistricting process, there's a new law that governs how cities and counties do redistricting called the Fair Maps Act. That doesn't apply specifically to special districts like the Parks District. But it incorporates a lot of these very good principles that we have here in our first 4 criteria. The first one, communities of interest. These are areas with shared issues or problems, shared concerns, and they vary depending on which level of government we're talking about. So sometimes our communities of interest that we might think of for that matter with our respect to our relationship with a city, with respect to the relationship with the county, may look a little bit different if we're talking about the Recreation and Parks District. And so we want to think specifically about our communities as they relate to issues that are on the board's agenda. Compactness and contiguity are both about the shapes of the districts. Compactness is the idea that it should be a recognizable shape, easy to understand boundaries. Shouldn't have hooks or fingers or other weird lines that don't really make sense with any reference to any sort of natural geography or community. Certainly there were communities that are not as compact, and maybe we could justify some of the boundaries. But if everyone's kind of struck as that boundary is really odd, that probably is a less than compact boundary. Contiguity is the principle that there should be one outside boundary for the division to the extent possible. So to the extent that we don't have a little bit on the very eastern end and the western end in the same division, but rather we have one solid whole where a person can walk or drive from one part of that division to every other part of that division. And finally, following visible boundaries, which include both natural and man-made boundaries, including other community jurisdictions like school districts and city boundaries, as well as major roads and other natural features like canyons and waterways. These really help voters understand which division they live in. The last two principles, respecting voters' choices, is the principle that the community has elected a board, and that redistricting should not be used as a way, or drawing districts should not be used as a way of targeting a particular board member or conversely protecting one. But but putting the criteria on our list allows us to have that conversation as we go through the process. And planned future growth is the idea that if we know there's going to be massive new developments, and I'm really talking about big development here, then within our 10% deviation limits, we might underpopulate an area or divide an area that we think is going to grow so that it's not all concentrated in one division. Similarly, if we think that there are areas that are going to shrink because of future development, we can take that into account as well. And it's planned future growth. So really this is speculation about what might happen over the next decade. I don't have to tell anybody that over the last 20 years, there's been a lot of projects planned that never end up getting developed. We can take that, we can still kind of take that into account as a guess or an estimate of how things will change. Looking at the district as a whole, or this is our kind of demographic. I know we're throwing a lot of numbers on this slide at you. It's all of our demographics kind of in one summary slide. And what I want to point out is a few different things as we talk about the numbers. Right up on top, the 2020 census total population count of 135,433. That's our total population that we're going to be dividing between the divisions. So simply divide that number by 5 to get that ideal population, 27,087 people in each of the 5 divisions. So it's not going to be perfect. When we look at the maps, they're not going to have exactly 27,087 residents, but they're each going to have somewhere in the neighborhood of between like 26,500 to 27,500. That's just an estimate off the top of my head. As we look at the numbers, we'll see that percent deviation, but if it's under 10%, presumptively legal. We do have total population broken out by race, and below that we have citizen voting age population. Now, citizen voting age population is the population that's over the age of 18 with US citizenship. The courts, for the voting rights purposes, often call this number the eligible voter population. It's not a perfect number, but it is one that the courts often rely on. As we can see, like the citizen voting age population may look a little bit different than our total population. For example, the total population is about 63% white, but the citizen voting age population is 76% white. And so what's going on is that Latinos in particular tend to be younger, tend to probably less likely to have US citizenship. And so we see these numbers reflected in why the courts have chosen citizen voting age population as the standard they use. Otherwise, it'd be possible to draw majority Latino or majority Asian American districts that actually didn't contain enough residents to overcome the barriers of the Voting Rights Act. Below that, we give you some turnout, registration and turnout numbers. So, and we'll provide these by district or by division as we go through the process. So you can kind of compare how many people are registered to vote. On the right-hand column, we have some of our basic demographics, age, income, education, and some housing statistics, for example, like single-family and multifamily homes, renting, people who rent versus people who own their own homes. And no, those two numbers are not always the same. And so what these numbers provide is they begin to get at a picture of the demographics and of the communities. Now, I'll be the first to tell you that the numbers alone don't actually paint a 100% picture of where community divisions are. And for that, we need your help. We need the help of the community to help us understand where these boundaries should be drawn. But what they can do is provide support or understanding of what makes that community distinct and different. What do we see different in some of these numbers when we look at one area of the district versus another? And especially looking at a district that not only includes a city, but a lot of the rural areas around the city. We look at factors like population density. Where do we see more of the urban core, which may have very different park needs than people who live in more rural parts of the district. We can clearly see right around the freeway, we have the highest population density, and out in the further out, especially outside of the city boundaries, we have fewer people per square mile. Looking at the Latino population, where we do see a slight concentration of Latino population is right along the 101 freeway, especially in Thousand Oaks itself. And so that's something that we're going to be looking at as we draw the divisions as part of our voting rights analysis. We don't see population concentrations of Asian Americans or African Americans. That doesn't mean those communities can't be discussed as part of our communities of interest. That doesn't mean they shouldn't be kept together, but they are part of our communities of interest discussion, which are a broader picture of understanding the differences between different neighborhoods. And we can also map some of those demographic variables. For example, on the top left, we see college graduates, the percentage of people that have a college degree. The areas that are in yellow and pink, over 75% of adults over 25 have a college degree. If the areas that are in that purple and blue, under 25% of the population has a college degree. And like I said, this can help us understand maybe some of the differences, but then it comes back and as part of a bigger picture of understanding the differences between parts of the district. And so these are the questions that we're really asking both tonight and again on our meeting on December 1st. So I know I'm throwing a lot at you tonight. So if you want to go away and think about this and come back on December 1st or write an email or participate in the process of writing or by phone, we welcome all sorts of feedback. But the question is, what are your neighborhoods? What are the geographic boundaries? What area needs to be kept together in a single division? I like the way that the law phrases it, the Fair Maps Act, for the purpose of its effective and fair representation. So even though that doesn't strictly apply here, but what areas should we be trying to keep together no matter what? And it may not be an entire district. In fact, a lot of neighborhoods are much smaller than a whole division. But it's a neighborhood that we can use as a building block as part of that. And maybe we can try to understand that neighborhood in the bigger context. What other communities adjacent to it? Does it have something in common with? And that's really where we talk about communities of interest broadly. Neighborhoods build into communities of interest based on their shared interests. And that's where I said earlier, specifically thinking about what's relevant to the Recreation and Park District. Because it may be natural to say, hey, these two neighborhoods share a common issue with traffic on this street. And when we're talking about drawing city boundaries or county boundaries, that may be a very useful community of interest. But if we were in a school district, we might think about, well, hey, they send their kids to different elementary schools. Maybe they have more in common with other parents who send their kids to those elementary schools. And so my point here is that communities of interest, we really want to think about how they relate to the services provided by the park district. What are the shared issues, the shared characteristics, the shared problems, the shared concerns? that bring neighborhoods together. And of course, the more we have actual geography, the more we have specific references to streets, to communities, the easier it is to be able to see, like, this is where a clear boundary line should be go. This is where we have a little bit more of a fuzzy boundary line. So when we try to keep that neighborhood together, we make sure we get all of the neighborhood. And so we have a couple of different master plans, including a map of the parks, and such, that might serve as the beginning point for defining communities. These are maybe perhaps very official definitions of communities that we might rely on, but they may not reflect our lived experience. And so that's, again, just to kind of summarize here, what this process is about is not about changing what the board does or the responsibility of the board to all the residents of the district. This is about simply changing the method of elections and making sure we get the best divisions possible. These divisions that we adopt will be used up until the 2030 census, when we get new information and redraw the lines, just the same way we redrew congressional, state legislative, county, and city lines last year. And to that extent, what communities and what neighborhoods should we keep together? Should we try to be absolutely sure are kept in a single division? And so with that, thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing your thoughts and answering your questions tonight.
For how much of the-
So this is a public hearing and we're going to have multiple meetings. So this is the first crack the board has had to hear the presentation during the open public hearing. We do want to open it up for any public comment. I know that the speaker cards that are all filled out are all for the pickleball, the next item. Is there anyone online that's waiting? And if you are online and just kind of watching, raise your hand if you do want to participate. Okay. So this would have been the time to take public testimony. If there is none, then we'll reopen this again on the first. Of course, the board has the opportunity to provide comment too.
Yes, Dr.
Madam Chair, thank you for the presentation. You know, this has come at us rather rapidly and we're learning as though drinking from our fire hose, as people have expressed many times. So appreciate the background. Just for a point of clarification, it was not the city council that's in districts. It was our school district that went into districts. So just want to make sure that the public record reflects that.
Speak into the.
You gotta push the button. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on.
Oh, is it?
I just need to talk a little closer. But yeah, thank you for the information. And I hope the public does engage and get some input because again, we have no predetermined ideas on how this is supposed to play out and appreciate the background. Thank you.
So, moving on then, if there are no, oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to make a brief comment. I suspect that few of you are here to talk about demographics in our community and understand why you are here. But please understand that we don't have any flexibility. We received a letter from a law firm 30 days ago, 45 days ago, and there was a very tight time frame that we have to have all of these required public hearings. The fact that this first hearing occurred the same night we have another agenda item of interest is unavoidable. So please understand why we're doing this, inquire that we do this. You saw one of the earlier slides where there are some entities that were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to fight this. We're a small district, we can't afford to do that, so we have to go through this process. So thank you for your understanding and patience.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. That's good. Okay, yes?
Director Lang has a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, Director Lang.
Yes, Director Huffer kind of touched on the topic of we're kind of forced into a particular decision-making mode. And as the speaker mentioned earlier, hundreds of thousands, if not more, dollars have been spent by other cities and entities and park districts trying to fight this. And it's not going to happen. And we decided as a board that we would rather put our funds, which are limited, to work for our programs and our staff and so forth versus, spending
Fighting.
money on lawyers, et cetera. So, we're having to move this right along. We didn't, like it was mentioned, we didn't even know about it 45 days ago.
No,
So, again, thank you. And thank you for your involvement in, Park District matters, such as pickleball, et cetera. That's very meaningful to us, knowing that we're communicating with our constituents. But again, we're going to have to go through this process, whether we like it or not. And we hope that, there's going to be some positive, results, and we're just going to have to all hang loose and see where this goes. But, and I want to thank the speaker for the information provided. And I'm not sure I could read all of these slides. Will there be copies of this or online on our website?
Yes, I believe the slides will be posted under the agenda item for tonight, and we'll have them available throughout the process.
Okay, thank you very much.
thank you, Dr. Levitt.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, yeah. It was a good presentation.
We need that.
Okay, we're moving on now to item 9. And we're bringing up pickleball. Prioritize potential additional pickleball court locations in Caneo Recreation and Park District. Update you.
Thanks, Vice Chair Holt, and members of the board, and everyone that's here tonight. I always like to start off with, especially, I did almost all the site meetings. Unfortunately, I was sick for the last one, so I couldn't attend. But I always want to start with full disclosure. I play pickleball. And so does my wife. She plays pickleball too. But that doesn't define us. We live in town. We've taken full advantage of all of what CRPD has had to offer my family. Between my 2 daughters, my mother-in-law, my son, myself, my wife, we've all worked, played, and volunteered for CRPD at some point, whether it was preschool, sewing, theater.
Up.
Well, I'm 6'6". So I'll do my best. Between all the things we've done, we are playing, like I said, we've played everything. We've hiked, we volunteered, we've sewing classes, we've coached, we've done theater, guitar, preschools, therapeutics. So we've done everything. Yes, but I always have full disclosure that I do play pickleball. So let's go with why are we here? We've got the history. Thank you, Cameron, up there for the history. So back in the spring of 2021, we've always our budget process. So we do a 2-year budget process every spring, of an odd year. And back in spring of 2021, it's a 10-year budget process or a 10-year plan with about 200 projects worth over $100 million. And we've had, for the last couple of years, a project called additional pickleball courts, location to be determined, because we didn't know. And same thing, we've also had similarly other projects called Dog Park Number 2, location to be determined. Skate Park Number 2, location to be determined. So when I presented that to the board, I don't know, there's really no comfortable way of doing this. Where I presented this to the board a couple of years ago, it said, hey, this is what we're doing, and the board had said to me as staff saying, well, I know there's a big interest in pickleball. Why can't you figure out where a location is? I said, because there is no perfect location. There is no obvious location like we're going to put it here. And it's just no good place to put it, no perfect place to put it. So that's why we say somewhere in the district. So the board directed us to come up with a process for the location. So we came back in the summer of 2021. And because of the interest of the community for pickleball, and the board created an ad hoc committee, and that's Directors Holt and Directors Huffer, who helped us out with this process. And they got together and said, hey, let's figure out these priority locations that we have. So it was almost a little over a year ago that we first started to meet with this. And so we said, hey, let's get together and figure out what is this process going to be. And again, we always talk about this as a process. This isn't just something like, hey, let's put it here, we're done. All right, so the ad hoc committee met. And then one of the first things they asked was very obvious is there a need for additional pickleball? So we were able to look at our own stats that we have for our pickleball classes. Registrations are way up, and we were able to actually split it too with what we call first-time users. So first-time users were way up and have been growing. Our wait list had been growing. So it's trending that we ourselves, Canal Rec and Park District, are creating more pickleball players. Also some other evidence that there's a need out there. The Ventura County Pickleball Club, a local club, they're in existence for about a year now. They were formed, and so that's one of our nonprofit partners that's out there. So then also the board had asked, well, what do we have? What's our current inventory for dedicated pickleball courts? And we have 6 dedicated pickleball courts at Rancho Caneo playfield and also 2 at Del Prado playfield. So then what's the objective here? So what is this? What should this add? So we demonstrated that there was a need. So what is the objective of this committee? And it was is to create a comprehensive process to prioritize locations with no funding. We know we have no funding. This is, again, I can't emphasize to everybody on the board and in this room that this is not something tonight we're going to, hey, here's the priority number 1, and then we're going to go out with tomorrow morning and start with shovels and start digging holes and putting the pickleball courts out there. All this process is to prioritize, and then later on when we do in the spring of 2023, when we come back and do the next 2-year budget and 10-year capital improvement plan, we will put those priority locations accordingly into the 10-year plan. So then they said, okay, what's the criteria that we have for additional pickleball courts in the community? So we came up with an additional 6 courts that should be lighted. They should have a bathroom. They should have parking. And we also took into consideration the distance from the surrounding homes. And so those are the guidelines that we came up with. And so some other things that was the criteria, the guidelines. Pick this up. All right. You still good, Sue? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. So then we said, what are some of the guidelines we have? Because when we first studied it, we looked at, hey, partnerships with the school district, partnerships with private folks. We would love to do that, but at the moment, those people aren't coming forward to us. So what can we control? So the only thing we can control are our own facilities that we have out there. So what we took a look at was all our community parks and our playfields. And the reason we use those, because community parks and playfields are built for active recreation, like pickleball or baseball or softball. And then to broaden the horizons of what is available out there and to be more comprehensive, we also considered neighborhood parks that are over 10 acres in size. We also said the process should include factors such as location, and location meaning we have pickleball, like I said, at Del Prado and at Rancho, which are on the west end of the district. So we should consider other locations in the central of the district or the east end of the district, because if you look at all our facilities that we have, in a sense, we've got baseball fields all over the place. We got basketball fields all over, basketball courts all over the place. We got tennis courts all over the place. So maybe it won't be the best idea just to have pickleball on the west end of the district when the east end of the district or the central doesn't have as much. We also needed to consider the operations from our recreation staff, how that's going to affect their existing operations. Also from the parks, the feasibility of the development, and also our friends at Ventura County Pickleball Club. What are their desires and their wishes that they have, how much it's going to cost, and also a public outreach that we would do at each site. And we also said, hey, we need to come up with a scoring system and then come back to the full board, which we are here tonight, for a recommendation for the priorities. Again, we're just talking about the priorities. This is not something that we're going to be doing the very next day and start construction. And then we put this into the budget process, like I said, in the spring of 2023. And then those projects would compete. A pickleball location, a new pickleball location would compete with 200 other projects. They're about $100 million. So it depends on where it would get slotted. So that's what we set up in our first initial meetings. And from that, we came up with 19 locations. And the 19 locations, those are the addresses, but let's go ahead and go to the next one, gives you a little bit better idea. So these 19 locations are throughout the district. As you can see on the west end, that's like number 1 is Dos Vientos, and you go 19 all the way on the east end, that's North Ranch Playfield. So these are the 19 that fit those criteria of their community park, they're a playfield, or they're a neighborhood park over 10 acres. So this is the entire district inventory that we had there. So we went to, next slide, what we call a level 1 analysis, where, because 19 is a lot to look at. So how are we need to narrow down the 19 and get it a little bit less than 19. So we wanted to look for something that we can study a little bit more. So we would develop general descriptions, and of each of the 19 locations came up with pros and cons of each. And from this, I know this is, you can't read this, but it's also in Exhibit B in the staff report. But we eliminated, on the first blush, we eliminated 9 sites. For example, Fiore Playfield, which is looks like number 13. We eliminated Fiore Playfield because that's wall-to-wall baseball there, and we do not own the land there. That's Southern Cal Edison owns the land along with Caltrans in the city of Thousand Oaks. So that's one example of, hey, first blush, we eliminated Fiore Playfield. So that left us with 10. So next slide. So as you can see though, so the ones marked in red are the ones that were eliminated, and the green ones are the ones that are left over. So then we went to what we call level 2 analysis. And level 2 analysis just is a little bit deeper. We got into those 10 remaining that are there. We worked with our recreation staff, and we looked at what is the permitted use and drop-in use for those remaining 10 facilities, like what is the demand out there and what is the revenue that we have. And from that, we eliminated 5 more, and that's in the salmon color. And if you like instance, like Thousand Oaks Community Park, which is number, I don't know, somewhere it's the big fat one in the middle there. I can't see that. I apologize.
That's the big one.
Oh, excuse me. I'll go Dos Vientos. So I was going to go Dos Vientos because it was up top. Dos Vientos, which is the one up top, we eliminated Dos Vientos Community Park because that one had 1,550 hours of permit use that we would lose if we did that particular project. So we eliminated 5 more, and it left us with, so here's the map. So that's the 5 remaining and 4 more that got taken out. So then the level 3 analysis, before we go to the map, level 3 analysis took into consideration, we talked to the Ventura County Pickleball Club, got their input on what they believed would be the best location. And we developed some preliminary concepts, which we'll show you in a minute. We also did some public outreach at each remaining 5 sites. We posted signage on site about the meeting. We visited all 5 sites. I said twice, once on a weekday, once on the weekend. We've received a lot of emails, and a lot of phone calls from folks in addition to the on-site meeting. And we also post a lot of things on the website. So those are the 5 remaining. And if you look, so the 5 remaining, we have number 2 is Del Prado Playfield. 5 is Rancho Caneo Playfield. 12 is Caneo Creek Northwest, which is across from the dog park. 15 is Oak Brook Neighborhood Park, and 16 is Triunfo Community Park. So very briefly, next slide, I'll go over what was done. The preliminary concept plans, again, preliminary concept plans, kind of like back of the napkin sketches. Rancho Caneo Playfield, if you look, that's additional, the pink is additional pickleball courts, moving the basketball court a little bit to the south. But because of that, we would have to add additional parking to meet the demand, and that parking is there in the orange. And then at Del Prado Playfield, it's a little rearranging of what's going on as far as the pickleball courts and the tennis courts. it encroaches upon the soccer fields and you have to realign the walking path. And at Oakbrook Neighborhood Park, it's eliminating the netball court, adding the pickleball courts there, installing an additional parking to meet the demand of the courts. And then we'd also have to add lighting to a park that's not lit at present. And then Caneo Creek Northwest, which is across from the dog park, is an undeveloped park. This is a park that's been master planned for 20 or 30 years. It's a vacant lot right now. So a typical neighborhood park would include playground, volleyball court, parking, trails, and some landscaping. But in addition, we were proposing 10 lighted pickleball courts and a parking lot. And then at Triumph Community Park, it was elimination of 1 tennis court and converting that into 6 pickleball courts. So from that, again, I know this is hard to see, but this is also in your packet. We also came up with a scoring system, and this was a lot of work between, and honestly, kudos to Directors Holt and Huffer for all the time we spent on this. We did 2 different things. We did a weighted system, meaning the different factors, the 6 different factors, so they added up to 100 points. Location in the district was 20 points, so 20% of the score was the location. Recreation staff input is the operations effect that this new pickleball courts would have on the recreation. That was 15 points. The pickleball club input, we gave 10 points. Development feasibility is simply like what has to be done to construct the project. That was 15 points. Cost estimate was 20 points, and public outreach was 20 points. And from that, we figured out the weights of what we thought each category deserved, and then we scored each park based from those different locations, and we scored them in a sense, like it was said, there was a bigger desire to put the pickleball courts on the east and the central end of the district. The rec staff input, like I said, depended upon the impact on the existing amenities that are there. The pickleball club did a great job. They actually sent out a survey, and they gave us back what was first, second, third, fourth. They gave us all the votes that they had. So that's strictly numerical. I believe Rancho was number 1. Right? Rancho was number 1 from you guys. Yeah, so Rancho was number 1, so that received 100% of the possible points, and all the other pickleball locations received the proportionate amount as far as how their votes went. The cost estimate was our estimate on to develop and to complete the projects. And then the cheapest one, the least expensive one got 100%. And then there was a proportion ratio as far as numerically according to that. And the public outreach was done based upon the on-site meetings and also the emails and phone calls that we received. And it was based between like the rec staff input and the public outreach and the development feasibility. We relied heavily upon our hundreds and hundreds of hours or thousands of hours of expertise that we have in our park staff and our recreation staff for the scoring of this system. And so then we threw all those numbers together, lots of debating, lots of talking, and this is where it came out was what's the recommendation that you have in front of you, that Triumph was the number 1 location, Oakbrook Neighborhood Park was the 2nd location, Del Prado the 3rd, Rancho Caneo 4th, and Caneo Creek Northwest was 5th. And so next slide. So next steps, as I mentioned before, next time, we hope to have something tonight that gives us what number 1 is, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. And then we would come back to the board in the spring, and those 5 locations would be slotted with a 10-year capital improvement plan. And it might be year 1, might be year 4, might be year 7. I mean, considering the number 1 location, we don't know right now because we're not here tonight to talk about constructing the plan. We don't have a plan for construction. We don't have funding. So all we're talking about right now is just what the priority locations are. So again, like the timeline for construction depends very much on funding. And once the funding is available, then we would come up with, like we do any other project we have out there, we would start making refined concepts. We'd start the design development process. And like any developer out there, we go through an environmental analysis. Like with, again, any developer, any project that we do, this is the same thing we do with all of our large project, and we would continue with the public outreach that's out there. Because we know this, again, all we are doing tonight is prioritizing the sites. We're not saying this is going to happen tomorrow. This is something that we want to prioritize. So when we get to it, we already have gone through the process. Again, kudos to Directors Holt and Huffer and to the recreation staff and the park staff for the hundreds of hours, couple hundreds of hours that we've spent doing this through this process, trying to figure out what is our priority locations. I could spend 10 hours telling you exactly what happened and why we did it, but a lot of work was done with the ad hoc committee to come up with a recommendation that you have before you. You're going to hear tonight from a lot of people, and we know this. Again, going back to, there is not a perfect spot. There is not. We know that, and you're going to hear some passionate people against pickleball or pickleball at their location, and passionate people for pickleball. And so we're just here trying to accommodate the needs of the community who say they want additional pickleball courts, something that was directed by the board. But at the same time, we want to be a good neighbor to the residents who are nearby. And again, it's not an easy process, but again, I think it was well thought out. It was a comprehensive and took a lot of time to do it. And we are here tonight to answer any questions that you have about the process. Thanks.
Thank you. That was a great presentation. Does the board have any questions to ask?
Yes, I do.
Director Nichols?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hare, for the detailed presentation. And also, I was very impressed with the thoroughness and the extensiveness of the kind of analysis with the ad hoc committee and the staff put together on this, trying to find a way to at least provide some information. So I appreciate that. One of the questions I did have was as far as the requirements that were listed, 6 dedicated outdoor courts. I was wondering why the number 6?
The number 6, because we looked at, and talking to the pickleball folks also, pickleball is a very social sport. And we looked at what would be the minimum amount of numbers. Just imagine if, let's say there was 3, and 3 can accommodate 12 players max, three sets of 4. That you would go, and if there was 60 people there, you might be waiting quite a long time before you got to the pickleball courts. So it's a very social sport. It's something that, again, trying to get people moving through and playing a lot. The games are 15 to 20 minutes long, depending upon the play. And so that's where we did ask some of our other folks, other districts, what works for them. But 6 was the minimum that we came up with.
Okay, thank you. The reason I asked that is when we're trying to, in essence, retrofit park arrangement to accommodate this, I would say, well, maybe one park could accommodate 2 or 4, or another one 6, or another one 10. And if you're limiting it to 6, then you have to find a space that fits 6. But if you could do 2, or you could do 4, and it's in a certain setting seems to accommodate that, it seems like that should also be something to consider.
Yeah, we thought of that. We thought of that, but with that we came up with minimum of 6. There's some locations that could, I won't say easily, but it could get, because the pickleball court, one pickleball court's about half size of a tennis court. So the footprint is not that large, but so that's why we went with 6 for those reasons that I stated earlier. But splitting it up 2 here, 2 there, 2 there. It's more of the activity that goes on at those pickleball courts. And, if 40 people came to play on 2 pickleball courts, which is, sometimes at Rancho, I've seen 80, 100 people for 6 pickleball courts. So if 40 or 50 people came to play to 2 pickleball courts, they would jump in the car, turn around and go home or go somewhere else. That's too many for those courts.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
Just trying to find ways to, you know.
No,
like you said,
agreed,
tuck
agreed.
Things in.
Yeah, and that's why we
wherever
that's why we want to go for what we just a minimum that we
Okay.
had out there.
And I was also curious in the report, it indicates that there were a number of outreach efforts on site and, you know, through the various social media and online. How many participants actually attended the various meetings that were held?
Probably about 300.
Okay. And were those nearby residents as well as dedicated pickleball players that came from other communities?
I would say mostly, I'd say 90% were, Rancho probably had more of the pickleball players because that's where our current pickleball is. And Del Prado had a few pickleball players who might have been not from the area, but I think our other locations were 90+% local residents. But we did give everybody the opportunity to go to any of the sites. So someone from Triunfo could go to a Rancho meeting if they so please. So it's because when we put out the letters, we said what we're doing and where we're doing it.
Okay, very good. I do have a number of other questions about some of this, but I don't want to take up that time. I'd rather hear from our residents here as well, but maybe after that, we can have some more discussions.
Okay, any other comments?
Let me just,
Yes, Director.
if I could just make a comment, I know in some of the communications that we've received from supporters and detractors, you know, they're suggesting that this really isn't a scientific process, that, you know, we've put together a nice spreadsheet that, you know, proves the numbers. But as Tom pointed out in his remarks, the rec staff input comes from people who've been doing this kind of work for years and years. The developmental feasibility comes from our park staff who have been doing this for years and years. Of the 5 categories of items that we were scoring, public outreach was the most important, or at least 3. I mean, no category had more than the 20% that we gave, that we felt was appropriate for public outreach. We did, as part of the process, with the Director Holt, myself, and the committee, sat down with staff and asked them to make some adjustments. Instead of public outreach being 20 points, 20%, what happens is make it 25%, make it even more important than originally laid out. And I believe we took the 5 points, maybe from location, I don't recall right off, but we played around with some of these weightings to give more weight to the public output, and it really didn't have any significant impact on the rankings that they were looking at here. So is this a strictly scientific process? No, of course not. It's based on expertise of our staff. It's based on the output or the feedback that we get from you folks, that we get from the pickleball people. You notice that the pickleball people, you know, their input was considered only 10 points versus 20 points for the public. So it's more important for the people living close to these 5 locations. Their input is more important than the pickleballers who might be coming from the neighborhood, but might also be coming from somewhere else in the community. So no, this is not a purely scientific provable process, but it's a what I think is a rational and objective process based on the expertise of our staff.
Yes,
Yes, I would like to compliment the staff and the ad hoc committee that worked on this. I can see a lot of time and effort went into this, and as Director Huffer mentioned, this is not scientific, but it's good information. It's information that is applicable to what we're trying to accomplish. So I want to thank all of you that contributed the extra effort in bringing it to the board. I know that tennis is not quite as popular now as it was many years ago when the Park District put in a number of tennis courts, I being a tennis player years ago myself. And I totally understand, because I've been on a mixed pickleball tennis court with all the lines and so forth, and it is, you know, distracting and so forth, but are there sufficient tennis courts and inventory that we could start
Marking.
picking, that we can start converting some totally to dedicated pickleball?
We could, I mean, that's something that we also looked at. We have 22 dedicated tennis courts in the district, and we have 8 dedicated pickleball courts in the district. So one of the things we looked at, like say at Toronto Park, to get our minimum criteria of having 6 pickleball courts, one of the things we looked at was converting all 3 of those tennis courts to pickleball and just eliminating tennis altogether. But talking with the recreation staff, that was not feasible because that was taking away an entire amenity tennis from that community. So that's why we looked at removing just one of the tennis courts and keeping 2. But yeah, we did look at those different aspects that are out there of conversion. And even that is not something that's entirely feasible, because you know, like how if we want to do it, we want to do it right. And the reason I say that for the conversions can happen on a tennis court. It's good, it's not great, because like with the tennis court lighting that's already out there and the way the orientation for the tennis, you can do it, but it's just a little bit off from a perfect pickleball court, a perfect pickleball court is where the lighting is and where the fencing is. And so you have to make some decent amount of modifications. So rather than just eliminating tennis court, we said, hey, let's eliminate one of the tennis, like at Toronto again, for example, eliminating one of the tennis courts and build some hot stuff pickleball courts.
Okay, appreciate that. One of the parks and areas that I was, you know, familiar with before we went into this process was, Wildflower play fields. Because it has how many tennis courts? What,
4 tennis courts, yes.
Okay. Is there property adjacent to those tennis courts, one direction or the other, that could add pickleball courts?
No, we looked at that, and that had a lot to do, that came because of the, one, we looked at the one converting those tennis courts, one that, like you just mentioned before, the Wildflower gets a lot of permitted use that's there. And also the topography of Wildflower, it's got that drastic hill from the tennis court up to the playground. And also the parking is very limited on the lower end there. So we'd have to put additional parking there too. So there was a lot of constraints that didn't make Wildflower a more of a feasible location.
I was in the back of my mind aware of the topography and the issues that created to add, but it was just a thought that, asking you who looked into this in more detail and with more knowledge about adding pickleball courts. So again, at this point, I'm going to conclude any comments and questions. And again, thank everybody who participated, including, community who went out to these meetings. It's I thought a good process, and thank you very much.
More questions from the board members. We do have quite a stack here. And if you still call your name, if you still have questions or want to talk, fine. But there's a 3-minute time limit, just because otherwise we'd be here much longer. So I'm calling on James Wall.
And might I say, while James is coming up, we do have a shot clock. So we have a 3-minute clock. That's kind of a new addition to our boardroom. And there are people online, so they'll be asked to speak after the, I think,
Tom?
10.
Can that be lifted on
A
the
lot.
table?
So it's another.
Clock?
If you have no more questions, I want to pass.
There's about eight speaker cards here, so we'll take the online Zoom speakers after the public speakers that are in the room. So let us know you want to speak if you're online by simply raising your hand with the Zoom thing, and our operator there will keep an eye out. So when we get through in-house, we'll go to the, when we get through the in-house speakers, we'll go to the Zoom speakers.
Okay, James.
Good evening. My name is James Wall. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks. I live directly across the street from Triumphal Canyon Park. I suspect most of you have done a little internet research on this issue. And if you have, I'm sure you found that there are numerous articles on the internet identifying problems with pickleball from communities across this country, mostly associated with noise, but probably not all. And I just think it's causing problems that we don't need to have. I think by placing these pickleball courts in parks that currently do not have pickleball courts, you're asking for those problems to be expanded. It's just an issue that I think needs to stay away from a community park that has established its own identity over the years. We've lived across this street from this park for 36 years. By putting in these courts at this park, you're going to drastically alter that characteristic of that park.
Oh, interesting.
And so I'm concerned about that. Another concern I have is the formation of your ad hoc committee. You had CRPD employees, you had directors, you also had pickleball enthusiasts, but I didn't see any residents on this ad hoc committee that could voice their input. So it seemed like there was a bias set in with this from the beginning that really didn't give the residents an input into this. The next issue is the scoring, which I thought was rather subjective. And a case in point, I attended one of the meetings at Triumphal Canyon Park. And from my observation, there were more people there in opposition to pickleball courts than there were in favor of it. It's just that the ones in favor of it were much more vocal, much more assertive. And so obviously this garnered a score that I think it's what it'd say mostly supportive. Well, if I was doing the scoring, I would not have given it a mostly supportive score. So I think there was a bias built in to this scoring that didn't include the residents, especially adjacent to these parks. And so what I would ask is anything going forward that you have the input of the residents either participating on whatever committees you set up in the future or coming to us direct to get input. I think if you go talk to most of the residents who probably didn't attend these meetings, you'll find most of them are not in support of this. If you look at the activity of these courts, if you have 6 courts, the game's a half hour long, you've got 48 people coming and going every hour to that court. The parking lots are going to be overwhelmed. They're going to be parking on the streets. It's going to have much more impact than just the noise issue. So that's my input. Thank you. Oh, and by the way, you probably have the written comments that my wife and I have submitted in front of you. So there's additional information there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Herb Chick. Oh, you didn't have the residents.
I just also happen to be associated with the Triumphal Park scenario. I happen to be at both of the meetings. I agree with you when you say that the moderately supportive assessment, I would seriously question. I happen to be a tennis person. And as I observe what's going on here, this really seems to be a pickleball project without any regard for the tennis community at all, which is also a social community. But from day one, my first awareness of this project was a little notice hanging on the gate of one of the courts at Triumphal Park.
I don't know that there was a lot of communication to those people who might have an interest in this. Otherwise, I wouldn't even been at these two meetings. But the first thing that hits you in the head as somebody who plays tennis at Triumphal Park on a regular basis and has been there for over 20 years now, the fact of taking away one of three courts, there is a great demand for courts. And I would say in the last 2 years, the demand has probably gone up over 100%, such that we have to show up at 7:30 in order to get a court at 8. In the last couple of days, we're on court and people show up looking for tennis. They wait around for 15 minutes but they can't get onto a court because there aren't any available, and they leave. So the notion of taking away one of the three courts and converting it to pickleball does not make anybody happy who's associated with Triumphal Park. I mean, we're not anti-pickleball, although the noise is an issue in terms of my little bit of exposure to it. I would add that in these two meetings, there were people who were very outspoken about their concern. They live above the tennis courts up on the hill. They reported that they hear balls being hit on the baseball court, which is there, which is a fraction of what they would experience in their houses if people were playing pickleball all the time. And some of these people were pickleball fans as well as tennis fans. And one of these guys said his wife would probably ask to move if you put pickleball right where that one court happens to be.
I think the time has elapsed here, but thank you. That's a different perspective. Thank you very much. Okay, next is Judy Grund.
Okay, hi, I'm Judy Grund and I live near the Rancho Conejo Park. And I have a few concerns. First of all, the addition of the parking lot next to the community where I live is taking away from the park itself, where people take their dogs to socialize. They have birthday parties, they play soccer, they play baseball, they walk around. So taking away from the park to add pickleballs courts, which they already have 6 of or 8 of, I think is kind of silly. Not to mention the safety concerns about the children's playground. Maybe a car backing up and not seeing a child that's running out or hitting the accelerator instead of the brake, which happens often. Not to mention pedophiles, maybe at the parking lot where they have seeing kids playing at the park, easy access to the freeway to get away. Also, people will climb the fence to get into my gated community where the parking lot's going to be, supposedly. The guard gate will not see them climbing over. The noise problem. Also, I heard people at the meeting that I was at that live across the street. They say that in the morning it wakes them up because there's 8 pickleballs and people are playing before they're even supposed to start playing. People now come from Westlake, from Dos Vientos, from Moore Park, from other sides, other areas of Thousand Oaks to play pickleball. And I don't see why they can't put these courts in other areas, because we've already have 8 of them. We don't need any more. Also considering the traffic that it's going to cause. I don't know if you're familiar, with this, but Alexandria is building, some new biochemical research company down on Venture Park. And, that's gonna increase the traffic once that's done in about 2 to 4 years. Adding pickleball there is gonna increase the traffic too. So they're also adding a restaurant over there, which is gonna increase the traffic. So I think it's not a good idea to have the add additional pickleballs at Rancho Conejo because of all that.
Thank you. Okay, Catherine Nolan. Catherine Nolan.
Hello. I'm not as tall as Tom Hannon. Is that okay? My name is Catherine Nolan. I'm the current president of the Ventura County Pickleball Club. We formed the club 2 years ago and made it into a nonprofit, a 501c3 in 2022 and applied for a matching grant from CRPD to purchase more pickleball net. What do we do? The shade at Rancho Conejo. We raised $7,500 from our member dues and contributions. We've raised some of the money from pickleball tournaments and then CRPD matched the grant and spent another $7,500. And now we have this beautiful new shade project that's there on the multi-use courts there at Rancho Conejo. The reason that we formed the club is to promote and grow the sport of pickleball and to help people get started to play. In 2022, the club has close to 300 members. And there are hundreds of additional players who play at Rancho Conejo and Del Prado and in the area. And we'd like more places to play because the courts are busy. And it's the way that it works is that 4 people go on a court to play. And then when that game is over, those 4 people come off and then the next 4 people go on. So it's players on and players off, and there can be long wait times. There's definitely a need for more courts. We appreciate that CRPD has recognized and is responding to the need for more pickleball in the Conejo Valley. Our club, I'm speaking now from the club, we really appreciate the committee's report, the ad hoc committee's report and CRPD staff's report. We feel that that is a very in-depth report, and we appreciate the complexity of it and how much time it took. We appreciate that pickleball players' feedback was taken into consideration as part of that report. And we want to let you know that we appreciate that you're trying to get us more pickleball in the area, and we're here to help you in any way that we can going forward, especially if there are steps that can be taken to speed up the process and get something sooner rather than later. In my last 30 seconds, I'd like to speak for myself and not from the club. Personally, I believe that because pickleball is a community sport, that it makes the most sense to choose Rancho Conejo as the first location, because that would give us more places to play, more community base for people to come to play. And also when we are running tournaments, it would allow open play during those tournament days so that the courts aren't closed to the public on those days. And more parking, which we need in the community anyway at Rancho Conejo. We need more parking for soccer and for pickleball. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Susan Emerson.
Hi there, I'm Susan Emerson. I live on Stonesgate Street above Triunfo Park. We've lived there for about 12 years, and I am a tennis player, but I've played pickleball. So I'd like to oppose the construction of pickleball courts at Triunfo Canyon Park. And putting in the pickleball courts would eliminate a well-used and honestly the best court at Triunfo Canyon Park, the singles court.
And there wasn't any request from input from the tennis community, only from the pickleball community. I feel like if you're taking something away from a group of people, you need to let them know and let them give a chance to give their input. It's just unfair to only speak to one. I don't think tennis and pickleball should be in competition to each other, but you know, they kind of are. Yes, I can. I also would like to point out the geography of Triunfo Canyon Park. It's a natural bowl. I live above Triunfo Canyon, and just in the natural course of the day, I hear the crack of the bat. I hear children yelling. I hear people talking just from that. I never hear tennis. So all those things that I expect, you know, living near a park, I expect to hear those things. Pickleball is a new sport, and as a sport, it is 25 decibels louder than any of those other activities. So it would really, and being in the natural bowl, it's like putting it up to a loudspeaker. It's going to carry the sound very far and make a lot of people very unhappier than it would in a flatter location, just because it doesn't have that natural amphitheater. And adding a significantly louder sport to a park changes the atmosphere of the entire space. And the cost of noise remediation, sound walls, whatever you need to do would need to be added to the project because of the geography. And also because of the geography, Triunfo Canyon Park is adjacent to open space and all the hiking trails. And that would bring that sound of pickleball to those hiking trails instead of the sounds of nature. Triunfo Park is seen as a lower cost option because the lighting is there, the bathrooms are there, that kind of thing. But defending litigation from unhappy homeowners needs to be calculated. Because CRPD isn't adding another normal sport, it's adding a very significant noise nuisance. It's like adding a dirt bike trail or a racetrack. It's not normal park noise. And Triunfo Canyon Park, because it's a bowl, is a bad place to add a noisy sport. And the existing parking lots are very small. The lot closest to the proposed courts is right next to the children's play area. Frequently, children ride their bikes around the surrounding sidewalks and sometimes wander out of the parking lot. And with, 48 people coming for 6 courts, plus the tennis courts, it would add an extra 30 cars to the lot coming and going. And the chances of a child being involved in an accident just increases with that. And I know that CRPD staff gave Triunfo a low score and pickleball players gave it a low score. So there we go. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'm not sure what the first name is, Ms. Howells. Oh, hi.
Hi.
And I think you two are neighbors.
Yes, we are. I'm Emma Howells. Thank you for hearing from me tonight, and thank you for the report for the committee. I am another tennis player who lives on Stonesgate Street, like Susan. And like Susan, I'm worried about the noise, but I'm also worried about the lack of thinking about tennis players on those courts. Those courts are always full. It's really, really hard to get a court, as I believe this gentleman over here said, which is especially important when you're talking about bringing through younger players. My son plays, and we often have to drive around to try and find a court for him to play on. So I'm really worried about that. I'm really worried about the noise. Like I say, it's like Susan said, it's very much a bowl on Triunfo Canyon. And I belong to Westlake Athletic Club, and I know that they've had people complaining about the noise coming up from the pickleball club, from the pickleball courts there. I believe they have 8 at the club now, and it is a lot of noise. You can hear it right up the top of the canyons, for example. So that again speaks to the peace of the hiking trails. There's raptor poles out there we've put out there to encourage wildlife out there. How is that going to affect the environment around Triunfo Canyon? And also, like has been mentioned, it's a small park. It's got a great community feel. People walk to it, people cycle to it. We don't want lots of traffic coming in and out of there. There's not enough parking to do all of that. And please don't take another tennis court away from us there. We really need it. Okay, I cede my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and next Diane Birchman.
Hello, I'm Diane Birchman. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks. I think the first thing I want to address is, since there is significant comments about the Triumphal Park location, is the scoring in regards to the Oak Brook location. I happen to live there, so near there, so that, take that into consideration. But there was only a 0.2 difference. I couldn't see the slide, so I'm not sure where that 0.2 came from. But I guess because it's such a close second, I would actually like to see it be number one. Because I live where I live, I'm always driving to Rancho Pineo or Dos Vientos. And now that's, 7 miles. So now I'm gonna go another 7 miles ultimately, if it was Triumphal. So I don't know, I'm not sure location wise, if that's serving the needs of these people that like myself are in the central, the east end. I'm not sure why we went to the other extreme. But I'm curious about the 81.1 versus the 80.9. Pretty close second. And census seems to be, and oh, by the way, as you know, Oak Brook is not a bowl. It's pretty flat. So maybe take that as well into consideration. And census seems to be years in the future. I would like it entertained that you think about sharing or having a little bit of mixed use. I know I read in the comments that tennis players don't like it, pickleball players don't like it. Well, my experience has been, players always have excuse, to complain about why they're not playing so well. They do that at the indoor gym at Thousand Oaks Community Center, but I haven't heard it at the Rancho Pineo one. And I think there's a way to reasonably share. There's 4 courts by the Thousand Oaks Community Center. Maybe take one of those. I've been there. There's sometimes 1 or 2 empty, but maybe take those 2 and have some lines so that you can share. And have some guidance, have some ideas about how that's going to be managed. But I think that there's a possibility there because maybe, we'll see this all to fruition. I don't know, but it just seems like it's so many years in the future and you could actually have some action on this and take a little bit of pressure off of the Rancho Pineo, because I've been there. I know how impacted it is. I know how busy it is. I know how sometimes, I've gone to Dos Vientos, my husband and I, we've just turned around and gone home because it took us, forever to get there. And there's no way we're ever going to get a court. So we just go home. And, I have a Juris Doctorate, so I think I don't really like reading about, threats of litigation, because I think there's solutions to this. And I think one of them is, like I said, to have some kind of investigation into what the costs are for the mixed use.
I think the next card's for your husband, so maybe he can carry on because the 30 seconds.
Oh, because I wanted to talk about the classes because he's number 13 on the waiting list. It's like getting tickets to a, concert or something. That's not a drill. So this is my third thing because this really bothers me as long as I'm here. So, I've taken these classes and I personally know what the demand is. He's used to me talking a lot. But yeah, like I said, the registration for pickleball classes shouldn't be like you're waiting for, I don't want to see Taylor Swift, but it should be like waiting for tickets for Taylor Swift. And I know from my multiple experiences, I might get in at 9 and then literally, this is factual, my husband's number 13 on the waiting list at 9:01. And I have diligently filled out the surveys and explained about how consistently, it's there's such a demand there and the classes aren't available. And I don't know if you call them seasons, session after session, we remain with the same schedule. We have the same number of classes and 2 teachers to cover it. And that's all we've had. And I don't know, maybe the ultimate goal is that you don't want to encourage more pickleball players because now you've got more momentum and more issues. I don't know, but there's got to be something done. After over a year and a half, we still have the same issues and we have no new teachers and no new classes. So anyway, that's what the way it is.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And David is. Huh? Well, he's,
I guess he's gonna take a minute or so.
you've got a minute or more.
Okay. I'm Dave Birchman, TO resident and mediocre pickleball player. I appreciate the hard work put in by the committee to prioritize the locations. I am here really to put in a plug for the Oak Brook location. I'm not a sound engineer, but it appears to me that sound would not be a major problem at that location. Again, I'm not a sound engineer. It's also a part of the district that is has a dearth of pickleball courts. And the fact that lighting would have to be put in, I don't see as a negative. I see as a positive because it would add to the safety of the park. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, those were our speakers. And Tom, did you want to add anything? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
Oh, there is one online.
there is one online. Okay. Can we get that up? Okay, thank you. It's not coming.
Hello, can everyone hear?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Dr. Bimo, and I'm speaking actually with my wife's account. Sorry, I cannot be there physically because I'm at the out-of-state provincial conference in Florida. So I'm actually part of the Trifino Park community park community. I stay right across the park with my 3 young children and my family. So given the proposal, to build to prioritize our community park for the pickleball courts, like I want to support, my community there to strongly oppose that. I think you have my written comment and, with my wife for your reference as well. So from a medical standpoint, I'm also a master in public health. The health impact of pickleball in our community will be profound. And despite the fact that, the cost of converting those courts may be low, but I can assure you, the cost of healthcare costs and the negative health impact on the residents in close proximity to those courts will not be at its minimum. And the litigations, as you can see that, there's multiple, like articles, like established cases, throughout the country, not just in the California, as a state itself or in Los Angeles counties. Basically, this is pitching neighbor against neighbors and communities versus, like the boards. So those things, I think, this board need to take those into considerations. And those decibels, I think, this board need to understand that every 10 decibel increase, it means the noise is twice as loud. And the magnifications of those noise, to affect the neighbors in the our community is not fair, because we are there, the houses cannot move, the families cannot move, but the players comes and go, they play their games, and then they leave. All we hear from our enthusiast friends here is what they want to play more. But how about the impact on the people that lives there all the time? Do you want to have the same noise play at your ears from day in, day out, all day long, and you don't have a choice? I don't think so. So, as a medical professional and a public health professional, I want this board to realize the significant health impact this will have on the people living next to it. Not the health benefit, whichever our, enthusiast friends will advocate, but that doesn't matter, because there are other better sports, better options that benefit everyone without the cost that we're talking about. So I appreciate your time and, the opportunity to speak during this meeting.
And now we have Cindy Wolf, who would like to speak.
Hello. I want to thank everybody for their comments because I think everybody has made very valid comments tonight. But there are some major concerns. I am a Rancho Caneo resident. And my concern by livelihood, I'm a retired nurse, and safety is always number one out of everything that I'm involved in. And I think putting more courts into Rancho Caneo will definitely impede. It's one of these smaller parks with minimal parking to begin with. And if you add more pickleball courts, and you're saying, obviously, there's 4 at a time playing and people interchanging, you're gonna need so many more parking spaces to accommodate those few more pickleball courts that you build. And you have children coming in, playing, whether it's soccer or baseball, or just playing at the park itself. To me, that setup of that particular park isn't conducive to having so much traffic in and out. So that's one of my concerns besides just the noise. The other thing is that the pickleball is really taken on all age levels. It's from young kids to people in their 90s. So because you have so many age levels playing, why wouldn't we want to choose multiple locations to make it easier for people to reach those courts? For someone who said, I drive however much time to get to a court that I can't even play on. So I think spreading the courts out would also be more beneficial. And I love the idea of you guys saying, I think it's the north part where there's nothing there right now. You wouldn't be disturbing residents. You could build a facility that would have everything you need, even if you waited on lights and made it just for daytime play, if finances were part of the equation. But at least it wouldn't be impeding, as everybody has said, neighborhoods, people who bought in a community that they thought was going to be a quiet community and not over inundated with traffic noise. And by Rancho Caneo, as one of the other residents mentioned, they were building a huge building off of Rancho, and it is going to have 183 more square feet, 183,000 more square feet, which means that many more employees, that much more traffic, that many more people coming by that park. I feel safety is a huge consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Good morning. Karen? No.
we're good? Okay, well, thank you all, and I'm turning it back to Mr. Hare for comments.
And appreciate everyone's comments that they had again, as the board can see and I'm here, staff and see very passionate people and who love the board, staff. This is what we're about, is the public process is what we have. So that is great. What we strive to be good neighbors. And while at the same time meeting with the community, the community, I know, 70, 80 tennis with and we have racquetball floors, things that it isn't difficult, and like we said, it's not the perfect place, and we appreciate everyone's input, and we're finding that really possible, and we're going. Just some clarification, one gentleman said that we have pickleball folks on ad hoc meetings, not ad hoc meetings, sort of all the proper and staff. So it's not pickleball people from outside of the community. We did reach out to them and here and staff talk to them about this process. So we can say, just as the same as I think it was either Director Humber or the Director Langen said, we gave the pickleball, our partner group of Ventura County Pickleball Club, we gave them 10% of the input, and we also gave the public outreach, the other input for the residents. We gave them 20%. Again, the pickleball folks were not on the topic. Some other clarifications too.
Multi-strike, for, maybe that's something we do. We actually did approach that and before we even built Rancho Canal playfield, we looked at multi-strike with some different ones. And this meeting tonight, again, appreciate everything. Those meetings were not fun. That was slings and arrows and don't you dare strike my tennis court for pickleball and that was not fun. And so that's why we actually came, we did a couple different meetings there when we thought was great locations to multi-strike. And the community gave them heavy pushback with that. So that's why we created the process and find to put the law enforcement that way. That was Diane, you mentioned that it was a small but we tried before again, it's not easy. And then speaking for Rec David, class is always full. I know that for a fact too. I'm the same way. When I try to sign up for classes, that's not, 9 o'clock, your wife gets in at 9:01, you don't get in. Maybe she didn't want to take pickleball with you. No, it's but I know we have a very hard time balancing the amount of classes that we put on at Rancho and in Del Prado. I do get a lot of comments myself when I'm out there playing, because when we have, it's Mondays and Tuesday nights from 5 to 9, I believe, we have classes at Rancho Canal on two of the 6 courts. And I get as I'm sitting there, I try not to say, hey, I work for CRPD, but people come up to me and say, can you move those people to some other place so we could play pickleball, because their lessons are ruining our drop-in pickleball time. So it comes from both sides. So I think that's something our staff tries to balance, the drop-in play with the classes at the same time. So it's difficult, but it does show the demand that we have out there. And some another person mentioned about Trinfo being a community park, and exactly our definition of community park is for the community, not just the neighborhood. We have different definitions for neighborhood parks, playfields, and community parks. Trinfo is a community park, just like just like Orchard Community Park, Dos Pinos Community Park, Caneo Community. That sure is a very large area, very a big zone. So that's the definition of a community park. And then again, talking, there's no perfect place. Remember tonight, again, appreciate everyone's comments. We're taking it all to heart, but noise, traffic, safety, well aware of everything. No perfect places out there, but if and when these projects move forward at some time in the future, next year, 5 years, 7 years, whatever it is, we go through the process like we do with any of our other projects. We do an environmental analysis where we study traffic, we study noise, we study parking, we study all of that when the effect it has on the neighbors, the effects it has on the wildlife. You're talking about like the open space next door. We do all of that because we're required. We have to, whether we are putting in pickleball courts or whether we're building a new building, we do that with every single project that we have. So that would be part of the process as we go through. And as we move forward, again, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is, we'd be doing that. In addition, I want to stress very much to you that, we want to be good neighbors. We'll do more public outreach at that time. Because right now, we're just trying to look to slot numbers 1 through 5 so we can narrow our focus. So when the time comes, we have we've done this year's worth of work. We've done it now. So then we'll come back later on and say, okay, hey, we're ready to move forward with something. Now let's talk about further with the public. So there will be many more opportunities for whatever happens in the future. And I'll have everyone's email. We'll keep you on the pickleball list, email distribution list as this process moves forward. So you'll be kept informed as we go through.
Thank you, Chair Hope. Mr. Hare, based on the staff report and the recommendation, even if we prioritize the recommended list in the future, that could change.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. It's something if, you know, so we have Trinefo #1 right now, and again, I'm just saying things, making stuff up, so don't get mad. But let's say Trinefo we had in year 2 and Oak Brook. So the way we want to do it is prioritizing, meaning the first one is sooner. The second one is maybe rest. So let's say Trinefo was year 2, Oak Brook was year 3, and then Del Prado was year 5, et cetera, as we go down the list. We would, if that's something we do, when we get into year 2 and it's funded, which is huge. I mean, we're talking about funding, that's when we would actually go, okay, now let's get deep into this and see what we're doing. But yeah, this is doing is putting a priority where it should be slotted in the 10-year program, whether it's goes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 2, 2, you know, we could put both Oak Brook and Trinefo in year 2. They could both be at the same year. But again, it gives staff a better idea of the work we've done and where we should focus our efforts when we're looking for development.
But if an unknown came up on one of these prioritized lists and it says, you know, it doesn't make sense or it's going to cost as much more, then it moved down the
Oh,
list.
definitely. Yeah, definitely. If there's like we're a fatal flaw or another major flaw that we haven't thought, yeah, that's like with any of our projects that we do. We've unfortunately had to move projects back for different reasons, and we've moved projects forward for different reasons. But this is just giving us a foundation to work from and focus our efforts during the budget process.
To me, it's a good starting point to go through this process. And based on, as been mentioned by a number of people and myself included, that the ad hoc committee, the staff, the public and the hearings and so forth have done a good job. I mean, and so I just want to make sure that, you know, we're aware that even though we might prioritize this list tonight, it doesn't mean it's cast in concrete.
Yes, that is correct. I said, I remember the direction for the last 4 years or so, it's always said pickleball location to be determined. And tonight we're trying to get a little bit better idea of what the to be determined is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board comment? Yes.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you all for participating. Thank you for being here. Thank you for participating. Thank you for being cordial, even though you're not always in agreement. That's always a good thing, which I think speaks well of our community, which is why we all like to live here. So thank you for that. Full disclosure, I did visit all the sites myself today. I went to all of them. I must confess, when I got to Rancho Caneo, there was no place to park. And there was a beehive of cars running around looking for a place to park. So I just kind of was looking as I was driving through the parking lot slowly. And that was at 10 o'clock, which is, I guess, peak pickleball time, I presume, or just use time. So instead I went over to Del Prado and there was one car in the parking lot, you know, some families playing around the various playgrounds and things. But when I walked over to the courts, within a matter of minutes, there was a couple of cars show up and then 3 or 4 more. And then pretty soon there was a whole pickleball set going up there. And so I talked with them a few minutes and they said, yeah, we couldn't get courts. So we came on over here, but it's a long ways to drive, which I understand. But nonetheless, I was thrilled to see that every park I went to, there were people using all of our parks for various reasons, including tennis at the singles court at Triumpho. There was nobody playing tennis at Del Prado. Nobody playing tennis at Oak Brook because there's no tennis courts there. But I was just thrilled to see that there's just a variety of activities at all of our parks, and nice that we have these options. One thing that folks did mention is that Del Prado is a long ways to travel if you're not in Dos Vientos, which is true. It is a far piece to get to. And likewise, the people in Dos Vientos probably think the same thing about Triumphal Park. That is a long place to get to, but they're all within the district. And that's what we try to do, is provide a variety of facilities and a variety of locations throughout. We don't have everything everywhere. We provide a different, a variety of facilities and a variety of locations. So as I was going through this list and pondering, the pros and cons, I was looking at it as if I lived next door, to be honest with you, because I'm not a pickleball player. I have to confess with that too. Not that I don't want to play, it actually looks quite entertaining. But I've never played, so I don't really have an affinity one way or the other as to, oh gosh, we got to have these, or no, we can't have them. I'm just thinking, typically, because what we contend with here a lot is, what do the neighbors think? Because we like to be good neighbors as best possible. Not everybody gets everything, but we try to understand that as best we can. So as I was looking at this, and perhaps Mr. Hare, maybe you can kind of clarify how the process went. This one column was talking about location and district, but without explanation, I was wondering, why in the heck do the, being in the east gets more rating than being in the west? I go, is there some value to that? Because it didn't really explain why the location in the district was weighted one way or the other, which you subsequently explained. But the one thing that I was thinking about was, well, what about the vicinity itself, just the environs around the park? And I didn't really see a category for that, such as, what are the surroundings? What is the neighborhood? What's the proximity to the neighborhood? What's the accessibility as far as, driving to it? If, what is the lighting impacts? What is the noise impacts? Which I know some of those are technically environmental issues, but I didn't really see that. To me, that should have been like a column, what are those types of things? Because that seems to be most of what we hear about. How is that processed into this spreadsheet?
Location, one of the things too, a good question. It's like if you're looking at, like if you look at Del Prado and Rancho Canal, if you're looking at Exhibit E there, they were both in the west end of the district. It was a desire of the committee to, like we talked about, to spread it throughout the district, not just have them location, specific in the west. But Del Prado scored less than, they're both west, but Del Prado scored less than Rancho because of the easier accessibility to the 101 freeway. That's just closer. So yes, we did take into that's where we took into consideration driving access from the freeway or major roads. So that was part of that. And as far as noise and traffic and all the environmental analysis, again, like I said, yes, that's going to come down later on down the road. But we also took into the consideration the proximity to the residents, and that goes into the development feasibility category that's there. So we looked at like what can be done, how it can be done, and how can it be implemented easily. What's the ease of the feasibility of implementing this? So those factors that you had mentioned went into that score.
Okay, all right. I do think there should be, afterthought. I don't mean to critique the committee, but it just seems like those are the types of things that kind of bubbled up for me, is that I didn't see was quite at least clear as to how those were assessed in that process. Another thing I was questioning is there's a lot of assessment here of what potential impacts it would have, negative impacts. What I didn't see was where's the positive value added for this, and I didn't see that there was anything there as far what is the benefit to putting it in any particular park. Was that brought up in any discussions?
Well, no, the benefit for, so the benefit is basically the same for all, because we looked at the benefits. It's the minimum criteria of having 6 pickleball courts. And so it's the amount of people we would serve by providing the additional pickleball courts. And save Canary Creek Northwest, all the pickleball courts in the other 4 locations were adding 6 pickleball courts. And at Canary Creek Northwest, it was adding 10. So they would serve more of the public. But again, that's what it's basically equal amongst all 5 locations.
Okay, so that's why it wasn't assessed. I just figured they were all equal then.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay. I was also considering the whole parking emphasis, especially as I understand now that there's 4 players rotating every 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is. Like many people have said, if you've got 6 courts, 4 people on a court at any given time, that's a lot of people and a lot of cars, because they're probably often coming as individual cars, maybe 2 in a car. Is this warranting like a parking analysis? I mean, is it that significant?
It would, yes, definitely. That's why we at Rancho and Oak Neighborhood Park, we know just from a quick look at it that additional parking would be required for those locations. But again, with environmental analysis, and Del Prado
Triumph and they would be part of the environmental document. Canal Creek Northwest would have its own document in the park hasn't been built yet.
Yes.
As far as the impacts go, but yeah, parking is definitely something that is considered as we move along with the process. But again, Rancho and Oakwood Gateway Park, we know the parking would not meet the demand on for additional pickleball courts.
Do you know offhand how many parking places there are at Rancho Canal?
Not off the top of my head. No.
Okay, there's a fair amount, but I don't know what
So
exactly.
we expanded that parking lot.
Okay. So as I was kind of self-assessing some of the things as I went to the various parks and looking at this list, and then to me, what I thought was important, I was just, again, looking at some of those issues from the noise impacts, the lighting impacts, accessibility, vehicular accessibility, people getting to it. And I have my own top three that I would like to offer as an alternative. I would put Oak Brook Neighborhood Park as number 1, Rancho Canal is number 2, and Del Prado is number 3. Triumphal number 4, and not even consider Canal Creek Northwest because that's so far off the radar of being even buildable at this point for just parks. And then I would also suggest that we consider more is because this is not going to be funded anytime soon, to come up with some type of a plan for getting to that point, to consider more of these hybrid courts to try and fill the need. So that would be my comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there other
Chair.
comments?
Oh,
Yes.
Go ahead.
Just a couple of comments on Director Nichols' question. We went through a lot of, and yes, parking was a consideration. If you look at each of the individual plans, there are several places where we have to add additional parking, which affects both the feasibility, but also affects the cost estimate. So that certainly went into effect. Any of these 5 sites, there are going to be impacts. Yes, there's going to be some additional noise. Yes, there's going to be some additional traffic. And if we started with the original, the 19 parks that we started looking at, those same impacts would happen in any one of the 19 parks. It would be really nice if we were in a situation like Camarillo, where they have the old soccer fields up there, and there's talk about eventually turning that into a massive pickleball complex that's next to an airport and open field. We don't have anything like that here in our parks as much as we'd love to have it. Just a couple of notes about some of the comments that were made. Tom pointed out there are 20-some tennis courts scattered throughout the community. There are only 8 dedicated pickleball courts. You can argue whether tennis is going faster or pickleball is going faster, but everything I've seen and read, pickleball is maybe it's the same as tennis in terms of growth, but it's growing hugely. And there are some people say, "Oh, it's just an old person sport." No, there are people in their 30s, 40s. I know several of the high schools are talking about making it not a varsity sport, but making it an intramural sport at the high school level, and there are even younger kids playing. So the demand is out there. We need to somehow address that demand, and that's the whole reason for this project. A little bit of my bias, we have these 5 different categories. Location is important. You said Del Prado was 2nd or 3rd on your list. The problem is that is so far out to the west that someone even living in the central part of Thousand Oaks would have to think hard about going out there. I know when I referee soccer games in Dos Vientos, that's a bit of a haul, and you're going even further out to Del Prado. So, and as Tom pointed out, for many or most of our activities, we like to have facilities throughout our district, not just concentrated in one area. yeah, there would be certain advantages to having all of the pickleball courts at Rancho Caneo for tournaments, but it's not the district's purpose to put together tournaments, whether it's pickleball or soccer or baseball or whatever the activity might be. It's our purpose to provide for the entire community. And that's one of the reasons that I'm looking at either locations in central, the Hope Notes, or in the eastern part of the community. You said Oak Brook. I think you rated Oak Brook as your first choice. One of the questions that somebody asked here this evening was, why is it, they said there's only maybe 1 percentage point difference or even less between Oak Brook and Triunfo. I mean, any one of those 5 categories could impact it, but it could be argued that maybe instead of a 80% figure for the public outreach being described as mostly supportive in person or emails, that was based on what we received at the outreach meetings that we held in all 5 sites, and was based on feedback from the staff who attended those meetings and the emails that were received. Now, we've gotten a bunch of emails just in the last week when people saw that, yes, right now, Triunfo is slightly on top of the list. Maybe if we had said Oak Brook was top of the list, we would have heard from more Oak Brook people. Or if we put Rancho Caneo on the top of the list, we might have heard from more Rancho Caneo people. But as Tom stated, this is a way to give us some guidance as to what location we should be looking at first. Because there's so little difference between Oak Brook and Triunfo, one of the biggest differences that I see is takes a lot more work to develop Oak Brook and add parking, add lighting, add several different things that you don't have to think about at Triunfo. But they're so close, if you adjusted the public outreach portion of the equation, perhaps it could be argued that one or the other, maybe Oak Brook would be slightly ahead. I stand by the rankings that we have here, but I wouldn't be opposed to changing the rankings if it was still really appropriate and really important.
Any other comments by the board? Yes. Rick.
Yes, thank you, Chair Holt. Again, this is just a preliminary list based on the analysis, based on the information provided and so forth. And I would rather not this evening start changing the rankings until we have an opportunity as a board and with the staff and to discuss some of the particulars in more detail. I think in general, based on the categories of analysis and the information, I have enough information to go ahead and support the staff recommendation.
Okay. Do we want to make a motion at this point? I don't know, Tom, whether there's a motion situation here.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, yes.
I'd like to move adoption of the staff recommendation to prioritize potential additional pickleball court locations in the Park District in the order stated: Triunfo, Oak Brook, Del Prado, Rancho Caneo, and Northwest.
I'll second that.
Second, okay. Any other comments? Yes,
I'm going to make a little comment. One of the parks that was mentioned was Canal Creek Northwest, and I don't know if any of you have been on. It's off of Los Flores and so forth. Currently no park, but they're currently our neighbors. So they too, and having been by there so many times, those neighbors are, within a few hundred feet of where a pickleball court would be. So anyway, I again will compliment staff and the ad hoc committee for their efforts put into this process. And I'd like for us to move forward and address the needs of our community, the pickleball community and our community in general.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes,
If I could, just something you said, Director Lang. Unlike you, unfortunately, I don't feel I do have the information that I need to make a decision. Because of some of the things I was questioned about, particularly about the vicinity and proximity and some of the neighborhood impacts. I don't think I can support what the motion is, so I'll be opposing it tonight.
Understand?
okay. Let's repeat the motion, please. It's the recommendation that's listed here.
Yes.
Okay. So that was said already. I mean,
Yes.
there's a lot of discussion afterwards. Okay, so,
I'm sorry, did you second? You seconded.
I seconded.
okay. So, it's been moved in second, to, accept the recommendation about prioritizing, the five. Is this enough to say, or you want the whole thing ready? The five parks, and pickleball court locations. So that's a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
I'm in favor. There's 3-1 in favor. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all very much.
And just one comment, if you didn't put on your green card, like your email address, if I don't already have it, make sure you get that to me so you can get further information in the future.
There were some interesting topics brought up during this time, by the speakers, so we appreciate your being here.
Thank you all for coming.
Yeah.
Coming here. Thank you.
Yeah, you got to have your mic
Um,
on.
Okay, my mic wasn't on, but I want to say thank you for coming and we appreciate your input
Mhm.
and this very good information we received. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I gotta turn it on. Well, you're up. Yeah, Mark giving me the eye signal. Mark is here.
Oh, Mark.
Doug.
Mark, just come over and hit me.
Yeah, because he's working the soundboard. and
I
so he
know,
can't hear you. He's like, "Oh,
I'm not used to talking
No.
so much.
No. No.
Well, it's been almost 4 years since I've been here.
Thank you for coming out.
Hear it. I don't have no dog in the fight. I don't, but you guys have been talking about this.
As Tom said, it's still,
Yeah,
luck can happen.
yeah.
He's away. I'm with
It's
you.
a starting point.
Okay, our staff is ready to
Thanks
keep
again.
going, so we are going to reconvene the general meeting and go on to the next issue, which is, I've got so many papers here, 9B. And Tom, this is you again.
Yes.
Tom,
Yes, sorry.
okay. Just,
Thanks,
this
Chair.
should be very simple.
Members of the board, asking you to, yeah, well, let me back up. So, Azteca, which is our current landscape contractor, we've been with them for about 5.5 years. And we signed a contract with them. We did it was a 5-year, or excuse me, 6.5 years. We originally did a 5-year contract. We did an amendment to exercise a 1-year option, and then now we're into the last option year with them. A few months ago, when we executed that option year, they also got an increase for a CPI increase of about 7% due to CPI from $44,000 to $49,000. But then we just got a letter from Aztec about a month and a half ago saying, hey, we're not making, our money that we need to make on this contract. Can you please either give us another $12,000 a month, or we would like to be out on January 1st. So after discussions with them, we decided it was best to cut ties with them. And we also have our backup plan, which is going with Venco, which is they're the contractor with the city of Thousand Oaks, and going with Natural Green Landscape, who service Pleasant Valley. Reason we did 2 different contracts because with the short term, in the short amount of time that we gave them, in order to man up and get the equipment. It's a lot of work. So by splitting it up into two different areas, it also helps with our management because one will be doing east side, which is, out of Oak Brook Service Yard. So Robert Nunes and his crews will be managing that. And Patrick Belovic and his crews will be managing the west side out of the Orchard shop. So it makes better management on our end. It'll be a month-to-month contract. And it's so all together it's about $63,000 between the two of them. The permanent contract was set to expire this fiscal year. So we had already started working on the RFP for the next permanent contractor. So we're going to try to accelerate that process and hopefully end the temporary contracts sooner than later, but it still might be in July 1st. It might be a month or two ahead of time. But so we're moving on. We're going to give to us, the most important thing is the service to the community. The scope of work is generally the same except for everything's the same except for fertilizing and aeration, because that's long details, but that's when you get into mowing, it's just a lot more work for them to do, and they can't gear up for it in this short period of time. So we're just going to be doing that upon request. So with that, I'm available for questions.
Any questions? Yes.
A quick comment, looking at the Aztec letter in the staff report, if I was part of the company, I said, what took you so long?
We did ask them that question, yes. They said their mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we do structure our contracts where even during the first original 5-year contract, a contractor can come to us with valid reasons, between years 1 and 2 or 2 and 3 and say, hey, because of minimum wages or something like that, I'm going to need a bump. And we're, of course, we're fair. We don't want to have contractors go underwater, but they didn't do that. And they said it was their fault.
Are you ready for a motion?
Oh, I thought there was another comment. Okay. Okay, yes, could I have a motion? Oh. On and off, I don't usually have to do this. Okay, the recommendation is to, as listed here. Do you want it read completely?
Well, I would just say,
Yes.
recommend staff recommendations 1,
2 and
staff
3.
recommendations 2, staff recommendations 3, as presented in the staff report.
Okay, so based on the subject contracts for landscape service, the motion can read, somebody could make this, recommend or vote on recommendations 1, 2, and 3. I haven't done this in 4 years, so.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. All right. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, moving right along. Okay, item 9C. No. Item 9C. Okay, this is casting our ballots for special district regular member and special district alternate member to the Ventura Local Agency Formation Commission, LAFCO. And I know where we're going with this. So anyway, we have to, we'll take nominations. Anybody wants to start this? I can do it too.
Do we need something from our general manager?
I don't think so.
No,
We have a list
no,
of,
we have the ballot. I'm holding the ballot. When you
Yeah.
guys tell me who you would like to select.
and
I will say you guys nominated one of the people.
Yeah.
So I'd suggest that might be where you
yeah,
want to stick.
so I
right?
mean, we just have to pick from from 2 different categories. But in the first category, I'm soliciting a nomination, which of course, may I make it? I nominate Doug Nichols for the regular special district.
I'll second
Assembly.
that motion.
And just to be clear, Doug's been nominated by this board. What we're doing now is casting our ballot. So we're actually voting.
Okay, we're voting,
for,
we're voting, you
for
know,
Doug.
as opposed to that, yes. Okay, so the recommendation or the nomination of Doug Nichols is our recommendation for special district regular member. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody. Okay, congratulations. Now we do have the alternate special district member. And is there a nomination on one of these three people? Anybody?
I don't know either.
I don't know
of
either.
The three of them, just reading the information, I was a little more impressed by Josh Gray than the other two, but I
Okay.
have no other.
Does anybody have any further consideration for this?
I personally don't.
I,
I would support Director Huffer's
okay, yeah,
recommendation as well.
All right.
okay,
I
so,
would suggest that we cast.
okay,
vote
we'll
for Josh
cast,
Gray.
okay, that's and does somebody want to
I'll
second that?
second that motion.
Okay. So it's been
So we can all vote on that one.
yeah, so we shall vote on that. It's been, Josh Gray has been nominated, and second, for the alternate special district member. And, any other comments? Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it was unanimous. All right, you want another one in here? Okay. So now we move on to 9C.
So that was 9C.
That was 9C.
Up to
The reports
Okay,
and
now we're at
announcements.
10A.
Yeah, 10A
Which
through
is-
D, those are just for review
Yes.
and comment.
Any questions or comments? This is recreation and community services. Yes, Director Lang.
Yes, I'd just like to compliment and comment on the recreation division highlights. Under the boys fall soccer tournament, I like the fact that it's called a friendly soccer tournament. And then following the tournament, the fact that all the teams got together, you know, to enjoy fellowship and so forth. That doubles the emphasis on a friendly tournament and one where you're servicing individuals from throughout the community, and then everybody's into the sport itself. Versus, strict competition and biased competition. And then the other comment was the pickleball, smash pickleball tournament. Impressed with the pickleball topic in mind that a total of 107 teams or 214 players were part of this tournament. All the various divisions, mixed doubles, etc. So as we know, and in so many other states, pickleball is a lot more popular there than it is here. I mean, yes, we've got a lot of need for additional pickleball courts, but there are states, Florida and Michigan, and I forget the other one that I've heard, Texas, are just, bursting at the seam with pickleball courts and so forth. So anyway, just wanted to make that comment in reference to our recreation highlights.
Any other comments?
I'll just follow up on what Director Lang said in the pizza for the soccer players, but did the referees get pizza?
I'm sure they shared.
And also, I'm really glad to see that the Silver Starlight Ball is going to be back inside. I mean, we were sort of forced into it last year having it in the patio, but it'd be much nicer to be indoors and in the nicely new remodeled teen center. So that'd be great.
So any other comments or questions?
Well, I'm gonna, maybe this is the right time because it is in the recreation report, Veterans Day event, breakfast and USO show. I always attend and bring some of my veteran buddies and so forth, and they all appreciate it. And I just think it's a great gift to our community to have CRPD doing this for the veterans. So thank Patty and everybody else who participated and supported the creation of organization of this event.
May I just say that the creation was not the breakfast, which of course was at the Global Center, but the
Talking about everything at the Global Center.
okay, just the
and
Global
And
Center.
the recreation.
Yeah, okay. Because there are two military organizations that put on the ceremony at the park. So, but with the help of staff from CRPD. So, okay, as I said, I haven't done this in a long time, so where do I go from here?
Parks Division report.
I've got everything spread out. It's just like-
Back to Mr. Hare again.
Okay, back to Mr. Hare. I just lost this page, you know.
Thank you so much, Chair Holt, members of the board. Just a couple quick items. We have a public outreach meeting for Rolling Oaks Neighborhood Park. Coming up, I'll send you the letter, where the letter is probably going out tomorrow. It's going to be Wednesday, November 30th at 4 o'clock on site. And also Saturday, December 3rd at 9 o'clock in the morning. So we sent out to a little over, we're going to be sending out to a little over 500 residents. So it's about 40 or so on the east side of the property and about 500 on the west side of the property. And we'll also be inviting the surgical hospital and Los Robles folks and all that to come to the meeting also. And then tentatively planned fun and festivities and time to be determined. We're looking at January 21st for the team and global expansion and renovation ribbon cutting to happen. Mark that down.
Repeat that, please.
January 21st,
Yeah.
time to be determined. We'll give you some more information, but just looking to your calendars, put it down because you don't want to miss. Chuck's going to give a skating demonstration. George is going to give a slam dunk demonstration on the new basketball courts. Sue's going to give a cooking class.
I'll still be,
Doug's going to use the fitness equipment at the senior center. There you go. He's all ready to roll. But
FYI, I'll still be recovering from my knee replacement surgery.
okay, well, hopefully you could wheel up. You could we'll wheel you up there. No problem. It should be a good time. Yeah, so maybe maybe just go to we'll just put you at the senior side. So
I'll do my best.
yes, no, hopefully, no, we would love for you to be there, George.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but that's
Are you going to grace us with your presence there?
Yes, you will.
Good.
not sure. I'm going to start having appearance fees though.
Start having what?
Appearance fees.
Oh.
Yeah,
You just take a little bit out of the Santa pot at Christmas time and you'll be all set, so.
that is really dark. There's some kids who are not going to get toys because of you. I'm available for other serious questions.
Anything else you'd like to add, Tom? You said. Okay, Recreation Division.
Thank you so much, Chair Holt, Vice Chair Holt and members of the board. You guys asked last meeting how many mini grants we gave out and to whom. So I have that info for you. So AYSO 42 and 9 both received grants. The Botanic Garden, Chumash, ETI Corral 37, Ride On, Corba, Stagecoach have all received grants, and we've given out about $18,000. And I believe I have one more that still needs to turn in their funds.
So that is that. The Recreation Department has a new administrative assistant, which we are also sharing with Management Services. They are also sitting at the front desk. We had some movement that happened. So when you come in, her name is Raquel. And we are very excited to share this staff person. So we'll see how well we play nicely in the sandbox. Don't forget.
A friendly,
Yes. Whose projects take precedence. But we, don't forget the birthday party tomorrow, 4:30. So that should be really fun. And then the teen center is having their first event for the middle schoolers tomorrow. So, yeah, not tomorrow, on Saturday. Sorry, they're having a dance. So we're excited to see how many kids we can't get back in there. They've been busy, staff have been busy passing out flyers out at the middle schools. So hopefully we'll get a decent turnout. And with that, I am available for questions.
questions for
Rochelle?
Are there questions?
good report.
Okay, moving right along. Management Services.
Thank you. Good evening. So I'll keep it brief, but I do have a couple updates. So the first is responses to our RFP for a class and comp are due next week. So hopefully we'll be coming back to you shortly after with a recommendation there. And then secondly, we've partnered with GovInvest this year for our required actuarial reports for our annual audit. But in addition, we're using GovInvest to develop some modeling tools for our labor costs and pension obligation projections. And they can actually go out as far as 30 years to see how the predictions for CalPERS and our obligations for pension, as well as if we wanted to consider certain levels of COLAs, or if we needed to talk about changing part-time staff to full-time staff, what those long-time implications for both the annual labor costs would be, as well as the long-term pension obligations that would result in. So we're working with them and hopefully gonna be able to start to use that software in the next like 30 days. They're telling us they should have it all in the system, and then we can come back and give some of those reports to you. So that's all I have, and I'm available for questions.
Any questions? Yes.
Just a comment, I could have made the comment under reports and announcements, but it's just so exciting to see interest rates that are over 1%.
I knew you would say that. Yes.
But you could get T-bills that are over 3% now. So,
Indeed.
Okay, any other comments?
No, thank
All
you.
right, thank you for your report. And moving on to budget performance report.
General manager.
Okay, well, we had investment and budget performance.
These are staff reports.
I thought we just, I'm okay.
We're getting close. We're getting close to the end.
Oh, it's a, okay.
So,
General manager.
yeah, real quick. Again, we have our 60th tomorrow night. So at Canoe Creek South at the Snack Shack, community room, whatever you call it, the building in the center of the big soccer fields. And I think we'll have a nice time. So hopefully everyone can make that. The last resident sitting in the audience, I don't know what kind of comments they may or may not have, but as you all know, Andrew is now the next Parks and Planning Administrator for the Canal Rec and Park District. So now there he is, Andrew. Congrats.
You better.
So it's very, very, very exciting. And Andrew's going to probably be with us more frequently now as he kind of transitions in. So Andrew, welcome and thank you. And he earned it in a very competitive process. We had out of state, in-state, multi-city, big, good city candidates, and he outshone them all. So congratulations to Andrew. Few quickies. I'm going to be gone the November 30th and December 1st at a Capri board meeting in Harupa. Seeing a new community center. Then on the 1st, I'll be quickly driving through the LA Basin to get back here for Sue Holt's party.
So that'll be exciting. That's 5 o'clock on the 1st, and we're getting a nice response. So it should be a nice little evening in here. And then another party on the 7th, we'll have Tom Hare's retirement party. So we have folks leaving. It's the end of the year. It's that kind of time. So we do have a closed session. And as we conclude the meeting, you can decide whether to have it and you still have enough energy, or just we could continue it to the next, because we are missing a board member. And the next meeting's kind of light, so we could just continue that if you want to the next meeting. I'm ready to go if we want to go forward, but we could also put it off. Doesn't really matter either way. So with that, I'm available for questions.
I move that we put it up.
I'm fine with.
I'm fine with putting it off and waiting for
Yeah, as long as there's
Chair.
no time demands for that, then I think it'd be
Chair
worthwhile to
Cuthbert.
wait for Chair Cuthbert, absolutely. And besides, it's getting late.
We've been here longer than this.
Okay, director's reports.
Their director's report. Director Lang.
Yes, it's one of those times of the year. I've already had 2 MRCA meetings this month, and I've got another one that was just scheduled for next week. And the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy changed the date of their December board meeting, moved it up a week. So busy with meetings, a lot of good things happening within CRPD.
Any questions, Ted? I think moving on, yes.
Just a couple of things. Director Nichols and I both attended the COSCA board meeting on the 9th and had a brief farewell for council member Bill Delapina, leaving the council and leaving COSCA. And I had a fun time last Friday. I went to see Lion Witch in the Wardrobe. That was really cute. So, and I was glad it was inside. For some reason on the ticket said it was going to be on the patio. And I thought, November on the patio? Come on. But it was, they did a really great job. It was fun. And then Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever it was, I had to go to my breakfast with our general manager. So that's it.
Well, that was the best thing that happened to me in the 2 weeks. I had lunch with our general. That was great. I'm not sure what else I had because I didn't look at my calendar. So, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, COSCA board meeting, and then we did have another special board meeting last Thursday we all attended on the 10th. And then on the 11th, I also participated in the Veterans Day event out there at the park, which was nice, and came across a friend that I hadn't seen for a while, but I've known him for many years. Jim Mather is actually a Camarillo resident, but I know him from church, and he is 99 years and 9 months young. So I think he was probably the senior veteran of the group. And he struck up a conversation with one of the fellow pilots as he was leaving. And I was saying, yeah, I flew an A this and an A that. And he says, oh yeah, those were nice jets. He said, what did you fly? He says, I flew the old Bearcats, the old, propeller fighter. So kind of goes back a ways. I'm sure Director Lang is more familiar with those than I am. See, I had also had a meeting with our general manager, lunch meeting on Monday. And then yesterday I was up in Sacramento with the California Association of Rec and Park Districts, our board of directors meeting up there. Had a good meeting. We actually were able to vote to approve our next legislative lobbyist. Jim knows the young lady, Alyssa Silhe with Renee Group. They will be providing services for us, and we've got a very robust list of expectations. It'll be much more than what we've been used to try and move rec and park districts forward in this kind of literally playing off the tailcoat of CSDA and what they've been able to accomplish. So we're looking forward to move that forward. Interestingly enough, there was quite a conversation regarding LAFCOs, particularly Cal LAFCO, because there was a bill passed in this last session actually two regarding LAFCOs, but one of which was pointing out that if there are districts that are basically underperforming, that a city can kind of came in and kind of take them over if they want. In essence, I'm just really paraphrasing. So there's some concern expressed that, and one of our board members mentioned, say, well, yes, that was really directed towards a particular water district, but there's no language in the bill that talks about water districts or anything else. So basically, it's now an open session on any special districts, that they can almost be targeted. If there's a larger agency that wants to start saying, hey, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. So there's a little bit of concern expressed there. So we'll see how that plays out, and we'll certainly keep a close watch on that. And then after the Veterans Day event, I walked through the teen center, had an impromptu tour with Dan Nalbandian, who was very proud of the facility, and it was nice to see, and actually had a walk-in come in, because there was a day off, I guess, for the school kids, but it was nice to see, and looking forward to it to be in its full glory here in a couple of months. Thank you.
Thank you.
Out of curiosity, guys, how do they determine if the agency is underperforming?
They had some criteria which had to do with things like unresolved complaints, which is still rather subjective. Yeah, it's not clear at all. So it was very, very concerning to several of the board members.
Excuse me, when I served on LAFCO, both local and state, one of the criteria is not even having meetings or not even having director positions filled. Is a criteria for inactive boards. And in those days, it was a lot of cemetery districts.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, any other comments? So could I have a motion to close the meeting, please?
Thank you, Gavel, and do it.